Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Captchz. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back in. Today we're going to be doing another Miss Marvel kind of comparison, review, and like breakdown pretty much of the second episode that happened. And from what I've seen, Disney Plus has been merging a lot of not just the first series of comics, but also the second series, which is the 2015 and the 2016, and they're kind of mixing everything together pretty quickly, which is kind of good because that means that they're going to be hopefully proceeding faster with Miss Marvel. Obviously, we do have the Marvels coming out, I believe, in 2023, so they're definitely going to be doing something a little bit quicker, which is nice. And we have a little bit of new character in the second episode already, and then kind of some of the things that I went over in the first episode actually happened in the second episode, and I'll go ahead and let you know which portions that are. So before we begin, just want to say thanks for all the views on the first video that I put out there. I think we're over 30 now, so that actually really helps me out. If you guys can, remember to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe right now, and also comment and let me know what you think. So let's go ahead and get right in from the beginning. Okay, so we're going to start from the beginning of the Disney Plus show, Miss Marvel. I do want to reiterate again, I don't know everything, I don't think I know everything, so I'm just going off my knowledge from the comics to what we see on the TV screen, and kind of just go from there. So this should be a quicker video because, like I said, they put a lot into this second episode already. And I didn't really find too many comparisons to the comics, but there are some things, and if you saw my last video, I'll be able to put up some comic clips into the video so you guys can kind of see what I'm referring to. Now, in the beginning of the episode, they are continuing from AvengerCon, where all the madness happened when she actually was able to use her powers, Miss Marvel, Kamala, and then able to save Zoe. So right in the beginning, she's super happy. She wakes up, she's going to school, she's feeling on top of the world, and then she runs into Bruno, and he's still questioning everything that went on that night, and he still wants to learn more about like what actually happened. Then from there, you get to the part of Zoe explaining her and what happened there, and how excited she was and how grateful she was, but also blowing it like way out of proportion, trying to like glamorize the whole, the tragic thing that happened. I still don't understand how she didn't get smushed when she was on that Thor's hammer, but it's a TV show. That thing was going pretty fast, so yeah. But anyways, so she's talking about it, she's glamoring it up, and then that makes Kamala feel kind of good, because she's kind of awkward at first, like why is she like so hyped on this? But she's also very happy, and that's actually very similar to how it is in the comics, of how happy she is, and I'll throw in some clips right now for you so you guys can see. But from then, she actually bumps into a new student, and his name is Cameron. So she bumps into him, and she's like totally googly-eyed, and then she actually, like, her and Nakia, which is Kamala's one of her best friends, they're like both totally in love with this person that they first saw, and Bruno's kind of standing in the background like, I don't get what's going on, like what's happening, why are you guys like all quiet, and why aren't you talking, just that typical type of thing. So that's where we kind of start in the beginning of the show. So while the girls are at school, they hear Zoe is going to be planning a party because her life has been saved and she wants to celebrate. So Zoe's planning this party, and she invites the new kid, which is Cameron, and then obviously the girls want to go, but Bruno's like, yeah, we're definitely not going to that, and the girls are like, we are definitely gonna go to that. It's kind of funny. So, and that's very similar to what happened in like the last video. So that's where they kind of chopped it up a bit, Disney Plus, and then they put stuff that happened in the beginning of the comics to kind of the second episode, and you'll be able to see all that once these little clips go up. So they end up getting invited to this party, and then Kamala also starts to talk to Cameron a little bit more. But after school, they go to temple, and they are praying, and they're rushing, of course, because they just got off of school. So her and Nakia are going to temple, getting ready. They're washing their body, washing their feet, getting all clean for prayer. And they get to prayer, and they're kind of chatting a bit. And the minister, or I know that's not the proper name, but the gentleman that's doing the prayer, he tells Kamala to kindly be quiet while they're in prayer, and she actually says like, hey, sorry about that. It's just, kind of hard to focus on you when we can barely see you behind this wall, because there's this divider, pretty much this wall with the design through it, where the girls can see through it, but they're in the back. So all the men are in the front, and they have a nice clean section, and it's all nice. And then all the women are in the back, where it's kind of run down a bit, and kind of look like, like the women sort of like second, in the temple, where they don't get the best stuff, but everyone's still there communicating and everything like that. But they do have that divider because they want their thoughts and prayer to be pure. And if it was mixed, then you might not have the purest thoughts, things like that. So that's kind of what happens in the second part of the show. So let's go ahead and move on to pretty much what happened next. So later on, Kamala goes back to her house, and she sees Ami, which is her mom, and she's saying sorry about sneaking out, everything that she had done in the first episode. But then she wants to go to Zoe's party, and the main reason why she wants to go to the Zoe's party is because of the new student, which is Cameron. He's gonna go, and she's totally infatuated with him, and so is Nakia. So they end up getting to go to the party, and Bruno's just kind of tagging along. He doesn't really want to be there technically, but Kamal's going, so he's gonna go, and Nakia's going, so they all go as the three of them. So they go to the party, and this is where she gets offered the drink, and then she gets asked, what is it? And the guy that gives her the drink is like, it's just orange juice. And if you, like I said, if you saw my last video, you'll be able to see the clip there, and I'll put it back up for us right now. But he offers her the drink, and then she's like, it's just orange juice. She drinks it, and he's like, with vodka, spits it out, everything like that. Totally funny. And that's kind of where I was like, whoa, like Disney Plus is kind of chopping everything up, and they're doing it out of sequence, and they're doing from like bringing stuff from series 2, which is Cameron. So all these like different little things that are happening. So they go to the party, and they're having a good time, and Cameron is on the roof, and they kind of make him like this pretty boy, this hot dude, and he does like a front flip off of the roof and lands into the pool. Gets out of the pool, he's all wet, his shirt's off, you can see his his whole body and everything like that. And then he goes towards Kamala and Nakia and them, and he's like, hello, excuse me, you're on my shirt. And Kamala's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, I apologize about that. So they start talking, and they start talking about like Bollywood. Now, if you're not familiar with Bollywood, that's like type of like the Indian Hollywood movies that they make like in India. I'm not sure if you've seen any clips of them, but they're pretty CGI'd for the most part, but like they're super popular in India. And they start talking about all that and how everything's going. And they're actually talking about this in the car. So the cops end up showing up, and then everyone kind of just leaves. And Cameron has a car, so they're talking about this in the car. And Kamal's in the front seat, Cameron's driving, and everybody else in the back. And they're kind of making this little connection. And then Bruno tries to step in and tell him like, oh, like I like Bollywood movies too. I've seen this one and that one. And it's kind of just like, okay, well, that's great, but I was really trying to just talk to Kamala, So then he does offer her his number, so she gets that, and then they start texting immediately, and he's going to be trying to teach her pretty much how to drive and all this stuff. So after they drive, after they drive and get home, the next day or a day after, whatever the case may be, her and Cameron are going to drive, and he's going to let her drive his car, which is a very nice Porsche. So they start driving, they get to their location, they get out, and they're going to go get something to eat or drink. And so they're at this restaurant, and what happens is she sees her brother outside the window. Now, that's very similar to the comics, but in the comic, what happens is that Cameron is actually like kind of like a family member-ish, like an extended family, and he ends up going to her house, and her parents meet him, and they're like, Kamala, this is so and so, and she's like kind of the same way in Disney Plus, where she's kind of like, oh, like he's good looking, and she gets all these teenage emotions and things like that. And same way, like in Disney Plus, they are gonna go hang out, but the only way they can hang out is if Amir goes, which is the brother, because you can't go hang out with a boy by yourself, things like that. So they end up going to hang out in the comic books, and they're walking, and they're getting really close to each other with their conversations, and then they almost eventually hold hands, and then Amir like gets right in the middle between them, and he starts chatting up something totally opposite. I can go a little bit further in the comic book what happens after that, but we haven't seen any of this in the Disney Plus. We have seen zero villains for the most part. So that's where I'm kind of saying that this is going to be a little bit shorter video, because I'm not sure exactly how much to say from the comics, because then they might bring it out in another episode or two. So that's pretty much the gist of what happens. But I will talk about the ending of Disney Plus and what's happening there with Cameron and his mother. So in the Disney Plus show, Kamala is able to FaceTime her grandmother, and she's the one that sent the bangle over in the box. And while she's talking to the grandmother, she's asking her about the bangle, but she's trying to be as secretive as possible, just because she doesn't want the family to know that she has the bangle, and she's asking questions about it. But when she's talking to the grandmother, she actually says that it was the grandmother's mother's bangle that had it. And so that's what Kamala finds out, and apparently her grandmother's mother brought a lot of shame to the family with this bangle by following her dreams and getting caught up in all this fantasy stuff and things like that. So she's able to contact her grandmother, and that kind of relates to the comics a little bit in the second series, like the 2015 and 2016. That's actually when Bruno and her are actually trying to figure out where her powers are coming from. And since Bruno's like a total genius, he's able to kind of do like a total body x-ray of her and kind of see where this surge of power is coming from. And they actually find out that the powers coming from inside of her, obviously different than the Disney Plus, where they actually say, Bruno tells her, oh, it looks like the energy is coming from you, not the bangle. So it's still kind of confusing a little bit of where she's actually getting her powers, because you have one spectrum for Disney Plus where you think it's the bangle, but is it really just Kamala getting her powers, at a teenage age? Or is it more of it's something that one of her ancestors had, kind of similar to the comics, where she is thinking, and it was actually like this. So okay, it's kind of hard to explain because it's about time travel, and time travel is very hard to explain. So in the comics, they find out that she gets her powers from time, but in the first two series, she doesn't really time travel much. But there's like this sequence in one of the books where it's taking her back to India or Pakistan. Sorry, it is Pakistan. Long time ago with like her ancestors, and I don't totally remember the story because I didn't think that this episode was going to go to that direction. But in the comics, she goes back and she's like, "Oh, your ancestors are a great power," and things like that. So it's kind of like a good thing. But in the show, everyone's thinking it's a bad thing because the great grandmother brought so much shame to the family, obviously, and some people actually know of the grandma, and we'll get into that right now. So it's still kind of hit or miss of where these powers are coming from. Is it the bangle? Is it from her, and now that she has the bangle, the powers are just, exploding out of her? Kind of like things like that. So after her driving lesson with Cameron, but her and Bruno go to a kind of like a festival. I'm not too sure what it is. It's some type of holiday in the Pakistani culture. So Bruno went apparently last year and the year before, and so they're going to go again. So they end up going, and it's kind of awkward at first because Bruno's feeling some type of way, but then Kamala is also feeling a certain type of way. And at the same time, Nakia is trying to get a higher position in like the temple and make her voice known as a woman, and have a woman be sort of a leader there and people to look up to her and have the women, come to power and things like that. All good stuff. But what happens at the end of the night of the festival is that there's this boy, and he's in this bell tower, and he's trying to take a selfie, but then he falls out of the bell tower, and he's hanging on this curtain that's tearing apart, and he needs somebody to help him. So, like any other superhero, Kamala vanishes, changes into her outfit, still barely trying to understand her powers. Her hard light is what they actually call it in the second episode. So she's trying to use her hard light. And a little backtrack, but in this show, because I'm not trying to go over too much without it comparing to the comics, but they are trying to test out Kamala's powers and see how they work. And so she's able to throw the hard light kind of as steps and then, bounce from one to the other. So that's what she ends up doing to save the child. And she almost saves him perfectly, but I think she loses her concentration, or she's taking too much of the applause that she's getting. It's going to her head, so she loses focus, and the kid ends up falling down. But before he just lands on the car, she's able to kind of stop the blow again, similar to Zoe, not actually fully catching him and stopping him, but lessening the blow so that the kid's able to hit the top of the roof of the car and get saved. So that's kind of towards the end of the show. Now, what happens after that is Kamala's getting chased, and I didn't talk about this because, like I said, I'm trying to have everything kind of compared to the comics, but she's getting chased by Damage Control. And if you've seen Spider-Man No Way Home, you kind of get a little sense of what's happening is they're trying to get information about all these newer heroes that are coming out with powers and things like that, and they bring them into investigation and sort of things like that. But what happens is Cameron magically is there in the middle of the street. He ends up picking her up, saving her. She identifies herself as Kamala, so she ends up unmasking herself to showing her identity to Cameron. And in the back of the seat is actually Cameron's mom, and she's like, "Oh, I've been waiting a long time to meet you, Kamala." So I'm guessing that there's going to be the third episode where she's going to get a lot more information about her history and even possibly like where her powers are coming from. So the show's developing nice, but like I said, they're using a lot from future comics into the beginning of the story. So it's kind of, if you've read the comics, you're kind of like, wait, that didn't happen till later. But I actually kind of like it. I prefer it because that means they're just building the story a little bit better, and so it doesn't drag on. So you kind of get the gist of everything. But obviously, if you want the full story, you can go to the comics. So that's kind of where the show ends. And like I said, very exciting. And I'm gonna do one little last couple minutes here, just kind of talking and guessing of where things are going to be happening. So just some last little thoughts here is, one, we still don't know who the villain is going to be, or if there even is going to be a villain, because in the beginning of the first comic, they do talk about this guy called the Inventor, and that's kind of the first villain she gets in contact with, and that's where she uses a lot of her powers in the beginning. Then after that, there's other people that were affected by the Terrigen Mist. Now this is all in the comics, of course, and there's other people that keep popping up. So like every 2 to 3 books, she's getting involved with like some type of vigilante or some type of villain, and she's, you know, just trying to protect her city, you know, kind of starting off like, you know, Spider-Man with these villains, and he takes care of them, and some come back in the second series. So she actually does fight quite a bit of villains. I mean, there's nothing else to call him in the comics, and we haven't really seen one yet, or we haven't even got really hinted one yet. The only thing that we know for sure is, you know, she got her powers. You know, where did she get her powers? And we'll probably find that out in episode 3. Why is Damage Control looking after even after Spider-Man No Way Home 2 as well? So why is she's getting investigated, her and her friends? You know, and then ultimately pretty much where the end of this show is going to lead us, or who is going to come out. So a lot of gaps there, but I'm pretty sure probably by episode 4 we'll hopefully see some type of villain or some type of information of a villain that's going to be out there. Okay, so that's it for now. Until next week, we'll bring out the 3rd episode, and hopefully, you know, I don't have to do too much research and go too far in the future comics to kind of give you something good to see while I'm posting these little pages from the comics. If you have any concerns or questions, go ahead and write them in the comments section. If I messed up on something, or if I left something out, or why didn't I talk about this, why didn't I talk about that, let me know in the comments. I'll let you know my reason, and we'll kind of go from there. But yes, please like, comment, and share this video, and I'll see you guys next time.